What is going on, guys? Thank you for joining this episode of Phenomenal Outdoors. I announced a few days ago when I was doing a video on my tips on how to set up some deer attractants that I was going to start a new series to kind of share with you guys what I am doing out of season. And one of them videos was going to be a highly requested video on how I set up trail cameras on properties like I hunt. Now, this particular property is surrounded by woods, but I don't have permission to hunt the woods. They're not owned by the same person. So this is basically just two big grass fields that the deer like to travel through and bed in, and then on each side of the grass field you got two big bean fields. And there's really not much to look for when you're setting cameras up on an open area. And there's a camera right behind me. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. I got my tripod kind of down low because it's kind of broke, so I got to get on my knees right now. But not sure if you can see that camera, but this camera, my attractant, my corn is right there, and then all around this is just one big open grass field, and then behind it some tall grass that the deer bed in and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of deer activity. They're traveling through this field because you can travel that way to a bean field, plus there's some other woods and stuff on the other side, and go that way, there's another bean field. So this is basically just a big travel corridor, plus you got a few bedding areas behind it. And when I'm setting up cameras in open fields and open areas, a lot of times I like to set up cameras, kind of just put them random places before I actually decide where I want to keep them cameras. And the reason being is because I want to make sure deer are at least coming through that area, or seeing what they're doing. Because one year them deer might be all over that area, the next year they might move on to a different spot of the property. So I like to come out here a few weeks to a month before I decide to put out my cameras, and just set them on like random trees, random fence posts, whatever I may find, and kind of see what's going on. And once I make up my mind, I got 3 cameras set up on this property, kind of all the way, like just along this fence line, tree line, whatever you want to call it. And once I make up my mind, that's when I start kind of getting them deer to stay in that area. Like this area right here, last year was barely any deer. All the deer was on that end of the property, and most deer so far still on that end of the property, but they're coming up this way more. Last year they were like never on this side. So it kind of surprised me when I found out they were using this side of the property more often. So I set out some corn with my homemade deer cane that I showed you guys how to make, and they've kind of been coming here every night, getting them a bite to eat. And then if you watch the cameras, you can see them go into the grass towards their bedding areas. So they're coming, getting a bite to eat, and then they're going straight to bed, because their bedding areas is, I haven't been to the bedding areas yet this year. Last year I was, but this year I'm trying to stay out of them. But I'm pretty sure they're in the same spots, and if that's the case, they're straight back from where I got the camera at right now. So when you're looking for to set up some cameras, and I'll go down to one of my other cameras in a minute to kind of show you the way it's set up, and it's pretty much the same way. But when you're looking to set up some open field cameras, and what I call open field cameras, basically just what I call my trail cameras, they're in open fields. I got one camera set up at the bean field, that way I can see if the deer are eating beans and what times and all that good stuff. And then my other 2 cameras are set up like this. They're just set up in open, like just big open fields that have bedding areas around them. When deer season finally opens, which is in about 2 months, my camera locations might change. Right now I got them over feeding areas, like attractants and stuff, and I'm doing that just to get them deer to come in and keep them here, and also to see what bucks are still on the property and all that good stuff, because they don't have to eat this corn if they don't want to. There's 2 big bean fields right here next to me. So but the reason I did that is, number one, so I could get good footage and see what bucks are still on the farm, and second, sooner or later, I'm not sure when, but sooner or later they're gonna have to harvest these beans. And when they harvest the beans, it's not like when they harvest corn, they usually miss a crap ton. And I usually go scavenge all the leftover corn and just get free bait. But when they harvest the beans, they take it all, so there's really no food left for the deer. So I want them to know this food here. That way, after they harvest the corn, they still have food, they still have a feeding area. And if I did decide to keep the location right here, there's a bunch of grass behind me that I could easily set up a blind, maybe sit up there with a ghillie suit, set up an ambush point. There's some trees right here, but none of them are big enough to hold a tree stand. But when you're setting up a camera in an open field, there's really not much to it. Like I said, first thing I like to do is I like to go up and down the field, find a good tree, find a good fence post, and just set up some cameras just on random spots. Make sure this spread out. I got all my cameras spread out about 100 yards. A lot of people say 1 camera per 100 acres and stuff like that, but this property is really not that big. It's all field, so setting them up 100 yards away isn't really that bad for this property. So I'm gonna go down to my next camera, show you kind of what the location of it is. It's pretty much the same, but we'll talk a little bit more down there. Alright, so this camera location, the camera's right behind my GoPro, and you can see kind of just another field. This field is not as big as the other one that we just came from, but you can see behind it is the bean field, one of the bean fields. And I got a camera located about mid-section of that bean field. We're not going to go there today because it's really nothing special. It's just aiming at the beans. And there's more grass right here, more tall grass that the deer are bedding in. And there's also one thing I forgot to mention about that field, and it's on this field too, is the farmer is nice enough to come back here with his mower and cut like big trails on the edge of the grass for me and my grandpa to walk back here when we're hunting. That way we don't have to walk through the standing beans and nothing like that. So then I'll show you in a minute, but the trails that he cut for us, the deer also travel because it's easier than walking straight through the grass, and they're just wide open, and it's right along the bedding areas that are in this tall grass. So the deer are coming from their bedding areas, maybe getting a bite to eat of corn or beans, because they rotate every year, but they're coming through this field. And there's also a cornfield right there. That's something I forgot to mention. There's a cornfield right there. We don't have permission to hunt the cornfield, but they come from that cornfield and pop up on this camera. The camera that I have right here was kind of one of them cameras that I just randomly placed, but it was in such a good area already, I just never moved. And there's a trail coming over the fence from the bean field, from the cornfield to this area, and then going to the beans or whatever. So this section right here isn't really, I don't have no attractant here or nothing like that. Reason being is bean field and cornfield, they don't need it. And like I said, these cameras are only about 100 yards apart, so if I had an attractant right here, it would kind of interfere with that attractant area, and I want one attractant area and one only for right now, just to get the deer showing up on that camera when they're hungry. This camera right here is basically just catching them as they walk by. So there's really nothing special. I'll move the camera real quick, and you can see that's the grass I'm talking about. Just big grass fields. There's a trail right there that goes from here to up by the road, and it's easy access to cross the road and go over to the next property and all that good stuff. And these trails like this, I'm hoping you guys can see it, the trails are on each side of the field. So there's one right there, there's one on the other side, and then the field we just came from also has 2 trails cut along the side of it. And plus the farmer, I'm pretty sure, I haven't really walked these trails much this year, but on this side I'm pretty sure he goes with his mower and cuts trails like across the field. That way you can if we need to like cross over, we can. I'm not sure, but I think he does. But there's really nothing special to setting up my cameras on properties like this. In the woods it would be different, but I haven't been to the woods yet this year that I have property to hunt. I'll do a whole nother video on in the woods, but you guys have been requesting to do a trail camera video on how I set up cameras on properties like I hunt. So with that being said, this is how I set up my cameras on this property like I hunt. Guys, I hope you learned something today. Hope you liked the video. New videos coming soon, and that's all I got for you. Like, comment, subscribe if you're new to my channel, and as always, thank you for watching Phenomenal Outdoors.